Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are breaking down the one of the most debated topic in the software architecture, microservice versus monolithic. So what's the difference and when should we use the microservice versus monolithic? So let's start. Before I'm jumping to the technical words monolithic and microservice, I am giving you one example of real world scenarios. It's like a microservice and the monolithics. So think about our traditional restaurant, right? Where from appetizer to dessert is cooked in the same space by the same team and under the same roof. So if you think about a traditional restaurant, you can order the pizza, burger, any uh, coffee or other shakes, which all the things will be prepared in the same kitchen, right? So it's look like a bunch of the items in the same kitchen. And now we can talk about the food court. So in the food court, if you want to buy a pizza, you can go to the pizza food court. If you want to the burger, then you can go to the burger store. And if you want the coffee, you can go to the coffee store. You are in the same, means you are sitting in the one place of that food court in the one table, but the items are different with the different stores. So same thing has happening with the microservice versus the monolithic. So this is our main purpose to what is the difference between the microservice and the monolithic. So let's start with the technical words with the microservice and the monolithic. So in the monolithic is a traditional architecture. So last many years we use the monolithic architecture. So the monolithic application is built as a single unified unit. All the features like a user interface, business logic, database access are bundled together and deployed as a big piece. So if you have one project, right, like e-commerce project, so everything will be covered in the one project. Payment systems, your UI, your card system, means if you want to any cards mechanism, also if you want to any support mechanism, so that supporting ticket system will be covered in the same project, as well as the customer logics. So everything will be in the single project with the single database. So here you can see we have the multiple services which is attached to one single relational database, right? So everything is combined into the single project. It's called a monolithic architecture. So what is the microservice architecture? The microservices split the application into small independent services. Each one handles the specific business function and they communicate it over the APIs. For example, you can see here that there is a three services: account services, inventory services, shipping services, right? So in our e-commerce platform, if we wants to if you want as a microservice architecture, so account systems are means account system has a different API controllers, means REST APIs, like we have the multiple APIs which is related to accounting. We have the multiples APIs related to inventory. So that project will be a different with the different database. And if we wants to any other example like a supporting system, so we can create one new microservice as a supporting, and we all the APIs related to supporting ticket system is attached to that microservice. So every services means every module has a different microservices, and different microservices has our own databases. In the monolithic, we have only single database which is attached to our main project, and all the services, all the APIs calling the same database. But in the microservice architecture, we have the multiple projects, multiple repository, multiple particular projects which is attaching the separate databases. So this is the difference between monolithic versus the microservice. So monolithic has a easier to develop because it's a single project, right? And you can develop a single project with the multiple APIs, so single database. So it will be easily to develop a monolithic architecture. And for the testing purpose, it's a simple because we have a only single project, right? So we can debug the one by one lines on this single project. So it's a simple to testing. And if you have the small team, right, so small team has, so then monolithic architecture will be fine because you have a small team, so no confliction, much confliction will be occurs, so monolithic architecture is fine. But what are the cons? But if you wants to if you wants to expand your project with the like a e-commerce project with the multiple tenants, you have the e-commerce project with multiple tenants, so multiple requests and the multiple databases requires for that scalability. So monolithic architecture we cannot scale too much, but the microservice architecture we can scale up because we have the separate microservices there. Now one thing about the bug. For example, you have a single project and the single project has some bugs which is affecting to the multiple one file has have the multiple APIs calling, right? So one file have a single bug, and the bug is calling the multiple, that bug is called by the multiple APIs, then the whole system will be down, right? So that is the one cons of the monolithic architecture. And single project takes some much time to build and deployment. So there is a small thing, but it's a big thing when we are having the much when you have the more and more clients, right? So more request is that times the building and deployment will be take much time, it will be affect your productions. So what is the pros and cons of the microservice architecture? It's a separate microservices. Then it's a very independent scalability because we have the separate microservices, right? So scalability is higher than the monolithic architecture. Also we can use our different technologies for the different microservice. For example, if I wants to shipping service with the .NET and .NET core, right? But my supporting system with the chat system I wants to the Python, so I can create in the Python as well as, and my front end will be a React and Angular. So there are multiple things we can achieve by the microservice architecture because we have the separate microservice, separate modules, and separate database. So for example, if you want to use the Cosmos DB for particular payments for particular payments transactions, if you want the MS SQL for particular customer supports ticketing system, for you want some MongoDB, so you can use for that because the microservice has our own databases. Also, if you have the large team, then every means 2 or 3 person can work on the one microservice, another person will be work on the another microservice. So that is a there we can extend our microservice and our extend our teams without the conflicting the code between one teams to another teams, right? So that is the one pros of the microservices. And some defects are on the microservices look like that. um, we have to we have to deploy if we want to deploy everything means on the production, then it will be take some time, right? Too complex to deployment because every microservice require the or on CI/CD pipelines, and it will take some time to deploy everything, right? So that is some cons. Also if you think about the debugging purpose, one microservice is calling to another microservices, and if you want to debug the what is the main root cause of this and when where is the our system is breaking, so that will be that will be a quite complex because you have to check the all the microservice against to track that whole the functionality. So when we can use the monolithic architecture and when we can use the microservice architecture. So if you want to create your small project or you have the small team, right? to develop some prototypes, you can use the monolithic architecture, and then in the future you can update your monolithic architecture to microservice architecture. Also, if you don't want to require some more infrastructure mechanism, so you can use the monolithic architecture, because we have the one single database with the one project. So only one infrastructure is required, like a database, and one is for the project deployment. But in the microservice architecture, we have two multiple databases handling and multiple project deployment, so it will be quite complex to manage the infrastructure level. So there is a one person required for the particularly infrastructure handling, right, to do the CI/CD pipelines, managing the infrastructures or other stuffs. So for your small team, you can use the monolithic architecture with your small project. Use the microservice architecture if you want to develop a large scalable system, like we think about the multi-tenant e-commerce system. So multi-tenant has a multiple request of the particular customers, right? So this type of function, this type of projects, we require the microservice architecture, like accounting microservice plus database, different database we can use: Cosmos, Mongos, PostgreSQL, MemSQL, etc., right? This is the microservice architecture. So if you want to scale your project, and you want the much scalability of your projects, so you can use the microservice architecture. If you have the big team, we which can be work on the different modules, different microservice, so you can use the microservice architecture. And one more thing is like that microservice is not a better solution or not a big solution for your projects, but it's a part of your scalability of your projects. So if you want to develop something new, you can start with the monolithic architecture, and in the future, when you think there is you have a more team members, or you have to scale up your product with the more infrastructure level, then you can go to the microservice architecture. So monolithic to microservice architecture, you can move at that moment. Also, sometimes we are using the hybrid architecture, like not a as a monolithic, not a microservice. Like you have the two microservice architecture, but you are calling the microservice internally, and two microservice has shared databases, so it's called a hybrid architecture. So you can use the hybrid architecture, and in the future you can expand your hybrid architecture to the microservice architecture with the different databases and different technologies stacks. If this helped you to understand this difference between the microservice and monolithics, please hit the like button and subscribe for more these tech breakdowns. And let me know in the comments about your projects, which projects you are working on, microservice or a monolithic.